Thank you so much. And it feels so special being here on this special day. My screen seems to be blinking, but that might be reflective of the fact that I'm going to talk about Doctor Who. So for those of you who do not know me, I'm Professor Priti Parikh, or you can call me Professor PP, or you can call me Professor Pooh, as I'm a huge fan of Doctor Who. I spent 4 years of my life learning how to be civil. Yes, I'm a civil engineer and I'm passionate about delivering infrastructure solutions to every person on this planet. So I'm passionate about delivering water, sanitation, energy solutions to every human being on this planet, and I truly believe that they deserve it. Now, I live in London and I'm very fortunate as I can every day wake up, do my business, wash my hands off it, and it goes in an underground sewer or a pipe network, and it's out of my hands, not my problem. It gets treated centrally, and our human waste gets disposed. But imagine if I was living in a slum. So let me show you my solution on how I would exterminate poo if I was living in a slum. Imagine I'm in a slum and it's a dark night. You can hear dogs barking in the background. It's late and I have a poo emergency. Now, I don't want to walk in the dark for an hour and queue up to use the public toilet. So what do? I do my business in a plastic bag. Here, I tie a knot. I make sure it's done properly. So another knot at 90 degrees. Then I open the door of my house, look to the right, look to the left, make sure the neighbors are not watching, gently swing the bag, make sure there's enough momentum, slowly, gently, nicely, and off we go. I throw the poo away. That's my flying toilet solution, and I've washed my hands of my problem. But I wake up the next day, open the door, look down, and there are hundreds of bags outside my house because everyone has had the same brilliant idea overnight. And thanks to climate change, it rained. So I also have a pool of water and floating bags to deal with. So that's the harsh reality, the day-to-day struggles of people who do not have access to infrastructure services. So I wanted to share some of my frustration, perhaps, and some of the facts around access to infrastructure. Slides, please. So on this planet, there are 2 billion people who lack access to safe drinking water, 3.6 billion people who lack access to safe sanitation services, 800 million people who lack access to electricity. And the interesting question is, surely as engineers, as professionals, we know how to design toilets and taps and treatment systems and energy grids, but yet we see this problem. I grew up in India, which is a contradiction where you have advanced sort of engineering institutes, you have advanced research in space on one hand. So the technology exists. Technology per se is not the problem. But the application, the funding, institutional arrangements are often the barriers for scale up of those technologies. So then you end up in circumstances where you have millions of people who do not have access to very simple, basic services. And this is my biggest frustration, and this is what drives the research that we do. And quite often, we kind of fool ourselves into believing that this is a problem overseas. It's not in my backyard. This is not us. We're not going to see this. But this is how River Thames would look like without sanitation infrastructure. And you can see it's not a pretty sight. And interestingly enough, you may have seen in the media reports of overflow of sewage during heavy rainfall events. So it has become a reality. We do have to maintain our infrastructure. We do have to build new infrastructure. This is not just a developing country problem. This is a problem everywhere, that we need better infrastructure. We need to maintain it better. We need to invest in infrastructure. Infrastructure is everywhere around us. Well, it even has featured in Doctor Who. So for those of you who do watch Doctor Who and are fans of Doctor Who like I am, if you've watched the episode on Shakespeare's Code, the first thing that happens when the doctor and companion step out of the TARDIS is they're subject to a flying toilet, because this was in an era where there were no sewers in London. Or toilets and infrastructure can provide a setting for reflection for some of the brightest ideas we have. If you look around you, if you walk on streets, if you look around you, infrastructure is everywhere around you, whether it's the roads, the footpaths, electricity cables, internet, drains, rainwater disposal, drainage. Everywhere you look around you, there is infrastructure. I led a piece of work at University College London where I gathered evidence with the help of experts from health and planning and education. We reviewed over 500 publications and we identified links between sanitation and 130 out of the 169 SDG targets, Sustainable Development Targets. And we identified links between sanitation and all 17 of the Sustainable Development Goals. And what this shows very simply is that sanitation is non-negotiable for achieving sustainability goals. We cannot achieve sustainable development goals. We cannot be sustainable without sanitation infrastructure. And the benefit of infrastructure is not just about providing a toilet unit. It improves access to education. So if schools have toilets, it improves education. If health clinics and facilities have toilet, it has an impact on health. If you have sanitation facilities, there's potentially impacts and benefits around gender equity, because women are the ones who bear the burden and suffer the most from the lack of infrastructure. And it provides equitable opportunities. It has links with climate change. So basically, very simply put, infrastructure delivery can lead to achieving 77% of the SDG targets. And a lot of my work is around working with governments, working with charities to provide this evidence to make the business case of why investing in infrastructure is important and the wide-ranging benefits. So why is it important for ministries of health and education to work in this, and that this is not just a problem of one ministry. Now let's bring climate justice into this. The biggest tragedy we face is that the richest 10% of the population on this planet are responsible for 50% of lifestyle emissions, which means that the rest of the 50% are responsible for very little, possibly around 10%. Now, if you look at the map here, the map shows the areas or communities which are highly vulnerable to climate change. So they are the ones who suffer the most from extreme kind of weather conditions, flooding. They are the ones who emit the least. And if you overlay that on infrastructure access, they are the ones who also suffer from lack of infrastructure. So basically, you have a large proportion of the population on this planet who do not have access to decent infrastructure. So on a daily basis, they struggle to go and collect water, to sort out electricity, cooking fuels, they queue up to use toilets. And this battle gets even worse with climate change, because with extreme heat, it's harder to go and collect water. With flooding, it leads to contamination, so it's hard to get drinking water. It gets even harder to queue up at public toilets. Electricity access or cooking fuel access becomes a big challenge. So we have this grave injustice where those who are less responsible for emissions and hence climate change are the ones who now suffer the double burden of poor infrastructure and the impacts we're going to see of climate change. So as I head towards COP, as we all head towards COP, and I will be going to COP this year, I would like nations, I would like people to focus on finance, but adaptation finance, so that when we build new infrastructure, because we will have to build new infrastructure for those communities, we build it in a way which is climate resilient, which is sustainable, where we think about the capital or the asset, but also the maintenance of that infrastructure, and it needs to be done in a just and equitable fashion. So that's kind of going to be my big campaign later in November, that we need to build infrastructure, we need more of it. Now, a scary thought around this is, as we build more infrastructure, as those communities will get into a lifestyle which is similar to us, emissions will increase. So we also have a balancing act here of thinking of how we can reduce our emissions to enable those communities to get access to infrastructure, the services, the facilities that they rightly deserve. This is to show you a map of our planet, our world, and look at Sub-Saharan Africa. Look at the lighting situation here at nighttime. As you can see, access to electricity is a major challenge. Some of my research is about working with communities who have never used electricity before, and they are now using electricity through solar panels and a battery box, thanks to the work of my industry partner, BBOXX. But the amount of electricity they use is similar to using a light bulb for 7 or 8 hours a day. And that's their total electricity consumption for a day. And it is interesting that we find ourselves in this situation, come winter, where we are looking to cut back. We are thinking about electric blankets. We are thinking about air fryers. We are thinking about how to dry our clothes. How much should we use our washing machines? What should we do with kettles? So we find ourselves, interestingly enough, in a situation where we are looking to cut back on energy consumption. But I work with communities whose starting point is switching on a light bulb for a few hours, or if they are lucky, charging a mobile phone, or using television. Now imagine if that population had the same consumption pattern as us. What would the energy situation look like on this planet? So once again, there is a huge justice angle in the work we do, because we need to think about how can we provide access to those basic services, but do it in a way that our planet can sustain it. So if, and this is a big if I get a chance to be Doctor Who, hint, hint, BBC, what I would like to do is fly in my TARDIS, go around the planet, fixing the challenges that we have on water, sanitation, electricity. So my big dream and ambition is to solve the infrastructure challenge. And in doing so, I would like to exterminate poverty. I would like to exterminate inequity and make this world a better place to live. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Priti. That proves to me that she who holds the poo holds the key to power. So that's fascinating to look into the future and see how the whole world can manage their resources. And if you want to find out more about your work, Priti, are you on Twitter? Where can people find you?
Yes, I am on Twitter, Priti Parikh 73. It was on the last slide, but I'm very much on Twitter. Do find me, tag me on Twitter, and I'm happy to share more information either about poo or Doctor Who or power.
All of those things. I'm pretty sure are going to be the Venn diagram of many people's interests watching tonight. Thank you so much, Priti. Thank you for joining us live.